Hi, I'm Levin and I make games. I've been doing it for 5 years at this point, so there's a lot of stuff that I wish I had known whenever I started. There's also a lot of things I wish I had known 3 years ago, whenever I made the first tips and tricks video on this channel. So let's talk about some new tips. I'm going to cover Unity specific tips, and then general game development ones, and finally I'll cover how to get rich quick with no effort. So be sure to stick around for that advice. This video is sponsored by Zero to Mastery's Unity Bootcamp, which I'll talk about more later. But let's get into the advice. So let's start with some Unity specific tips. I don't have too many of these, but there are a few useful ones that I've been using more lately that I think are really great. First off, and this is an incredibly simple one, but it's also pretty useful, is to lock the inspector sometimes. It's kind of embarrassing, but it took me years to notice this little button, but it's seriously so useful, especially whenever you're working with lots of scriptable objects. No more accidentally swapping the inspector whenever searching for a reference asset. No more having to go back and forth through the same path to get to the same folder over and over again. Just lock the inspector or lock the browser and you're good. Second up is additive loading and multi-scene editing. If I had used this, it would have made my first game, Couch Combat, way more organized and probably would have given it faster load times as well. But basically, instead of having just one scene and unloading and loading in a whole new one every time you switch locations, including loading in things like a player object, the canvas, and stuff like that, just split up your game into a few scenes. You can already sort of do this by just adding don't destroy on load to certain scripts, but frankly, I don't like that system. It's jank. So I've just laid out my project with 3 main layers. The pause menu, which is always around, the player scene, and the game or menu scene. You start out with just the main menu scene and the pause menu scene, and then you load in the game and the player scene, and then while you play the game, I just switch around the game scene and keep the rest the same. Once again, this isn't rocket science, but I think it's pretty cool and it's not the sort of thing you'll find in most tutorials. Now I'm going to quickly cover my favorite part of using a game engine, making a game engine inside the game engine. Sure, Unity has a lot of useful tools, but they're purposely designed to be very general. So to help yourself out, you should make some of your own tools for whatever sort of game you're making. The vast majority of the time, at least for me, this boils down to just making some nice custom inspectors. I built them for quickly adding items to my game and setting up their effects and visuals. I also have a nice setup for enemy attacks and spawning behavior, plus some stuff like status effects. None of these tools are crazy complicated or advanced. I just realized early on in development that I would be spending a lot of my time making items, enemies, and status effects. So I just put in a little bit more time at the start to make the tools I use easier to use. Now you can go about this by programming your own custom inspectors in Unity. Yeah, this is great and all, and I've used it for a few things, like replacing the icons of the scriptable objects in my game. I personally mostly just use the tags that Odin Inspector provides to make my custom inspectors. Odin Inspector is an asset on the Unity Asset Store, but you can grab it on sale if you want to. It's also sometimes in Humble Bundles, and is also often discounted for Unity Asset Store sales. Speaking of ways to help you, this video is sponsored by Zero to Mastery. Zero to Mastery is an online education platform that offers courses on things like programming, web dev, cybersecurity, and more. They also have career paths that allow you to take several courses in whatever field you're interested in. For example, the Become a Game Dev career path includes a Unity bootcamp, a 3.js bootcamp that you can follow to build an interactive 3D portfolio, and a course for job hunting in the game development world. Beyond the courses, Zero to Mastery also has a thriving Discord community of instructors and TAs who can help answer any question, plus over 400,000 fellow students who you can learn alongside and who can help keep you accountable. Furthermore, there are also channels in the Discord for things like job hunting, resume advice, and finding a small group to work with. Upon finishing a course, you'll get a certificate of completion from Zero to Mastery, which is something you can put on your resume. The course that interests me personally the most was the one covering 3.js, as I've been developing my portfolio, and this provides a very unique tool for showcasing my work to possible employers. So if you're interested in joining Zero to Mastery, then use the link in my description and enter the code FRIENDS10 for 10% off your purchase. Get started today and take the first step towards mastering new skills with Zero to Mastery. Whether you're looking to break in a tech, level up your career, or build something amazing, Zero to Mastery has the resources to help you succeed. Okay, let's get back to development. Now I'm going to cover a few tips and things that I've learned about game development in general. And first off is project organization. It's been a few years since I last went over my setup for organizing my project, and it's changed a bit, but it's mostly just simpler now. I still use Trello for task organization. It's a fantastic tool for planning and cutting up a project into pieces, which is a thing you should absolutely do, as it's very daunting to look at a game project as a whole, as there are so many things to do, and it's much simpler to look at a few tasks that you need to do. And this is exactly what Trello helps me to do. Plus, it's free. Secondly, I use Notion for almost everything else. I log all my game development sessions, which is mostly for YouTube, but I think I'd still keep doing it even if I stop making devlogs, as it's just nice to be able to look back at what I've done and when I did it. And finally, I use Google Sheets to make spreadsheets, as they're fun and very useful, and the main one that I made is a big one with all the items in my game. It's been super helpful for balancing and planning, so I'd heavily recommend creating something similar if you need to visualize a lot of content or a complicated system like mine. Finally, I use Unity DevOps version control for version control. It works, and I've had less issues with it personally than I did with GitHub. And I really do hate command lines, so it's nice that you don't really have to use many of this. Oh yeah, by the way, use version control. If you don't, you could lose everything. Plus, it's also nearly impossible to collaborate with others without version control. Speaking of collaboration, working with other people is hard, especially other programmers. I honestly still have very little experience working with other programmers. However, I have been working with more people in other roles lately, and it's fun. I'm currently got an artist who is making portraits for MythoMania, which I'm super excited to implement in the game soon. And I also previously hired a musician and cover artist for Couch Combat. Basically, my advice is, you should consider working with people or commissioning them for doing things that you can't do well. I know that getting better is a huge part of why many people make games, myself included, but it's crazy hard to do everything. Very few people do it all. And I think that each time I've done it, my game is much improved because I commissioned others to improve the game in ways I couldn't. Plus, it's also just super satisfying to slot your work together with others and get it all working in harmony. And while I'm on the topic of working less, you know, people have already made games before. Like, a lot of games. And those games had a lot of the same systems and none that the one you want to make needs. So, steal them. Okay, not actually. It's very important to know whenever to use other people's systems, when to develop your own, and when to do a little bit of both. If you're making a game that isn't a carbon copy of a common game type, then it's probably going to have a bunch of systems that you have to make yourself. For example, I made the enemy spawning system, item effect system, and more in my game, but I also used open source tools and a few paid assets for more common things, like the platformer controller, the stat system, the dialogue animations, and tools to manage game feel stuff, like screen shake and sound effects. So if you're just making a game to learn some stuff, then go ahead and build it all from scratch. But even if this is a route you're taking, it also can't hurt to look through the source code of some other open source projects to figure out how others have approached the problem, and that might just make you a better programmer. Though personally, I make games to make games, so I'll steal all that I want. So the final thing I'm going to cover is how to get people to play your game. It's hard, and I'm not going to act like I'm a master of it. I'm not exactly Toby Fox, but I did manage to get over 1,000 sales in my first commercial game, Couch Combat, on Steam. So I've had some success, and frankly, my approach has been a very time-consuming one. It's these videos. These videos take a decent amount of time to make, so I really wouldn't recommend it to developers unless you actually want to make videos and enjoy the process of making videos, like I do. It generally doesn't take me more than 2 days total from the start of scripting to release for most devlogs, so I've gotten pretty fast at it, but it used to take me a lot longer. So if you're new to it, it will probably take you longer to get a high quality video. But it's also worth noting that I have to keep a log, record screen recordings, and sometimes videos just take more time to make or really flop or both, so it's far from foolproof. It definitely seems like short form content through TikTok or YouTube is a good way to go for game development content, especially if you can edit them well. You can get a ton of engagement, and if you have a Steam page or demo ready, you can also get a ton of traffic right away. So I'd recommend that to anybody out there, at least anybody out there who can figure out the short form content algorithm, because I sure can't. Twitter, the everything web platform and entertainment application, seems to also be a solid place for devs. All you have to do is respond to some stupid rage bait, and you'll probably get some engagement on your game. And finally, look into Steam Next Fest if you're publishing a PC game, because dropping a demo on there right before you release is a great way to get a lot of wishlist and eyes on your game, especially if it's good. That's also pretty important for getting people to play your game. But anyways, that's all for this video. Just kidding, you thought I'd forget. But I don't forget. The secret to making easy money quickly is to just take a few $1,000,000, put them in some nice safe stocks, and rake in the passive income. It's so easy, even a goldfish could do it. A rich goldfish. Anyways, be sure to check out my other tips and tricks videos, and thank you again to Zero to Mastery for sponsoring this video. Be sure to use a link in the description and enter the code FRIENDS10 for 10% off any purchases. Thank you for watching. Bye.